Hello, hello.
Hey, and we're back.
We're back for Friday Footnote.
Wow.
How was your week so far?
Weird.
Okay.
Well, I don't know, I have to qualify that. It's always weird in the age of COVID. Well, we're kind of post-COVID now. Mm-hmm. But it's still weird, right? Because
yeah, it is.
I just found out about something called One Health, and we don't have to talk about that today, but I started looking into it. It's more the same bullshit, you know.
It is. And then, of course, you know, the mental health stuff that's going around in all the corporate
Right.
departments.
Right.
You know, everybody needs to be on board with the mental health stuff.
Mental health. Well, you know, I remember when this, you know, when it first started popping up as a thing, and we've said this before. I've said this before. There was a guy that we were listening to now and then. We listen to him still, but he has a streaming radio, or streaming, you know, music, streaming music show. Yeah.
Every Friday.
But then he does it like he plays the recorded version or whatever throughout the week.
But he goes live on Friday.
Live on Fridays. And I remember, like, before we left San Francisco even, like maybe even around the election and post-election for sure.
2015, 2016, not 2020.
Yeah, right.
We're going all the way back.
I know. I ignored the 2020 election pretty much.
Right, but you're talking about his commentary on mental health, right?
Exactly, because all of a sudden, out of the blue,
started a long time ago.
Yeah, all of a sudden, out of the blue, he started saying things like, you know, make sure that, you know, you check on your friends and all this. It was the same talking points you started hearing other places, and it's like, man, this dude, he's either taking money or he's just like so locked in to the liberal, you know, talking points. And I think that that's the case more than anything. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think he's taking money.
No, I don't either. I think he, you know, his family supports him, and he makes some money from his streaming thing. So, anyway,
I know.
So he started telling, you know, and I thought that was really a weird thing, right?
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense to me. It was very, it just seemed out of the blue. And I kept asking. Remember, I kept asking you, like, why is this narrative or why is this phrasing so prominent right now? What is possibly going on? Because I didn't see any evidence of action being taken place. Of course, it was a test balloon, or it was not a test balloon. It was a precursor. It was a thing that was getting you ready for the next thing that was going to come along. And like these things, they don't always happen right away, right? Here it is, you know, 6-7 years later.
Right.
And we're starting to see the stuff happening, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, and was there anything in particular that you've noticed about that going on, like, say, this week or this month?
Oh, yeah. You know, it's all over the place, this mental health stuff. It's everywhere. It's interesting. You said something, though, that I want to talk about what you just said. The next thing that comes along, right? So there seems to be this demographic of people that, you know, they're the ones that were fairly privileged, fairly well off. They fell for the COVID narrative. They consider themselves really educated, and they ran out. And despite, you know, being organic and all that their whole life, they went out and got, you know, the bioweapon anyway. They got this injection anyway, even though they would be the last people in the world to ever get a flu shot, right?
Right.
But this, for whatever reason, was really important to them. So for them, like, let's start with like the Obama election, like the first one in 2012.
Yeah. Okay. Going back then. Wow.
Yeah. So like these are the kind of people that are like, these are the kind of people that are like this. We have to vote for Obama because we have a problem with unfairness and racism in our country. So we vote for Obama. And then they're like, okay, so we have to ride our bikes and buy green gas and all this other stuff
Green gas.
because of the climate change. And so everything is just the next thing. So that's how they treated COVID, right? So they were like, okay, and now there's a mental health thing, so we have to deal with the mental health thing. Scratch that off the box, check that off the box. And then we got COVID, okay, check that off the box. Okay, and then we have carbon emissions, check that off the box. And then we have, oh man, people are overpopulating the planet. Okay, check that off the box. Okay, we have to eat right and be better and do better. Okay, check that off the box. And the COVID operation was just kind of lumped into all of that stuff. That's the way these people think. It's just one random issue after another. That's how they operate.
Thank you for saying the word random.
Right. It's one random issue after another. That's how they operate. Whereas you and I may have been like that at one point, but for whatever reason, the COVID operation made it all fall apart. We no longer believed that there were these issues that we needed to check off our boxes to make sure that we were, behaving like, appropriate humans on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, the COVID operation made it all fall apart, which I find really interesting. That, people, that we were well on our way to just, adopting whatever narrative or whatever criteria was required based on that narrative. We were already on our way adopting a lifestyle that would wrap around, these false narratives.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We were vegetarian. We were going to, save the planet by not ever owning a car. We were going to be renters our whole life because, there's something bad about owning a home and all that. Because we didn't want to participate in this problem of debt or whatever. Like, it was just like we did all of these things based on this narrative that we had believed. Sure. But for whatever reason, when the COVID operation came along and the COVID narrative came along, we were like, full stop. Like, we just went back up, and then we were done.
Right. And
then it was like, no more did we play fealty to any narrative at all. We are going to do what we want. We are going to, maybe incorporate a little meat in our life, maybe drive a car, maybe own a home in the way we want, maybe just live our life.
Exactly. I think that it was the last straw, right? Or the last straw that broke the camel's back, as they say.
Yeah,
right?
That's why I always say they went overboard with the COVID operation.
Right.
They went overboard with it.
Well, and it was so...
They lost a lot of people to that. And I'm not talking through death and stuff.
No.
I'm talking like they lost a lot
it
of Americans. The shark. It totally jumped the shark. Like, I'm not going to watch this movie anymore.
I'm done with Happy Days. Fuck you, Fonzie.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, right. No, and I think what did it for me, I mean, aside from just like the craziness of it, it was the same. Okay, let me back up a second. After it happened and we realized what was going on, it took us a moment, but we stepped back and said, this is the same thing as fill in the blank. This 9/11. Is the same thing as 9/11. This is the same thing as AIDS. This is the same thing as climate change. This is the same thing as, whatever, right? And we realized that it was the same narrative, the same marketing ploy, the same tactics that were used over and over and over again. All they did was switch out the words.
It's so interesting, though, that it took that operation, this particular operation or that one, to make us back up. Like, why didn't 9/11 make us back up?
Okay, here's why.
Why didn't 9/11 jump the shark?
And this is what I was going to say, is it was over the top.
Yeah, it really was.
It really was, because it took the climate change narrative of like all these lies and this like crazy story about, explaining, like, you notice how every time they do this, right? Every one of them, it's like this shaggy dog story. And do you know what a shaggy dog story is?
It's like kind of.
It's basically, it's usually used in humor, and it's associated with puns, but it's this kind of story that basically...
Weird how Disney made a whole movie out of it, The Shaggy Dog.
You're right. Yeah. Right.
They made a movie out of a pun.
Right.
It's so funny.
So the Shaggy Dog story is just basically this long narrative to get you to a punchline. And it distracts you from, this, that, and the other thing. But the point is that all of these narratives were there to walk around the issue to get you distracted from the fact that what they're selling you is bullshit. It reminds me of that Simpsons gag that we posted somewhere, where Grandpa Simpson is talking to Burns, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we don't need to go out there and crack heads, as cops, because we're a bunch of old men. What we do is we use the distraction story."
Right.
Oh, it was,
I remember when.
It was like, he's like, well, it goes like this. Well, I was going to go downtown and I went. I needed to get a change for a nickel, and nickels were made out of something else at the time, so I had to do this and that. But what I did was I tied an onion to my belt because it was the style at the time. Anyway.
Yeah, and it's just this long, crazy, winding, super stupid narrative that people get.
Exactly.
And so I think that the whole, we're going to get to a point here. I think that a lot of the narrative that people are really, really obsessed with is long, winding, tying an onion to your belt, Grandpa Simpson trying to make change for a wooden nickel or something like that.
Right.
When really what we need to do is focus on what's really going on. And what's really going on is some serious geopolitical stuff that's been going on for, almost a decade.
Right.
Or more.
Yeah, I think that a lot of this stuff has been set up.
Thanks, Obama.
Obama.
I think Obama's
a real the Obama administration and period of time is a nexus point, right? And I think you see these nexes over points across a period of time. So post World War II and the forming of the United Nations, I think, is a good demarcation point, okay, and nexus. And I think there's other points along the way that may be smaller, but they point to things. And I don't want to go into them because I'd have to go into my brain and figure out which ones they are. But we can see them, and then you see other things that are I feel like 9/11 was more of a test case scenario, than it was anything else.
Well, and I also feel like 9/11 was a big psychological campaign in order to traumatize the country and put the fear of God in the country, because at that point the country was getting far too confident. You know what I mean? It was getting far too. We had the Occupy movement, which was kind of a success. Now, was that before?
That was after.
That was after 9/11.
Yeah.
So 9/11 really...
people were just kind of going along in their lives. There wasn't really anything really significant before 9/11, except for the election in 2000, where what's his name? The activist lawyer.
David.
No. He was in the Green Party.
Ralph Nader?
Ralph Nader, where Ralph Nader stole the election from Al Gore. And allowed George W. Bush to be elected, right?
That's what we were told. The audience is only hearing our voices; they don't know the sarcasm and that I'm rolling my eyes, right?
Wow, I didn't know they could go that far back in your head, Julie.
Even Ralph Nader himself practically looked when I met him, and we were sitting across the table from each other. Even he himself was basically trying to say, they're going to blame me for Bush.
Right.
And he even knew it.
Right.
He was really cynical.
Yeah.
And there are still people to this day that we know personally that actually blame Nader for Bush, just like they blame Stein for Trump. They blame Stein for Trump.
We've allowed some objects to be into the studio, as as we've allowed cell phones with their sound on into the studio too. No, that's okay.
Sound on? What are you talking about?
Oh well.
Oh, because your aunt texted you.
We don't have to tell people that.
Oh, okay. So anyway, the story that we're trying to get to, which we're taking forever to get to,
Well, because it's a shaggy dog story.
right, is something that I noticed back in 2015, prior to, even prior to the election, probably closer to 2014. 2014 would make more sense given what we know and given what we're about ready to talk about. But the first time that this particular thing that happened ever, caught my interest was around 2014, when Rex Tillerson was screaming about how China wanted to occupy the South China Seas. And obviously, I once again cynically rolled my eyes and said, of course, Rex Tillerson, who at the time, I believe he was the CEO of ExxonMobil, all he wanted to do was get access to all the oil that is very rich in the South China Sea.
Because he was an oil dude, right? He came out of what, Exxon, you said?
That's what I said. He was the CEO of ExxonMobil.
Right. But he became Secretary of State?
Yeah, he was Secretary of State between 2017 and 2018 under Trump. Okay.
So this is post-Obama. Yeah, all right.
But back in 2014, I want to say, he was and, probably once again still screaming about it when he was Secretary of State, 2018. He was like, why does China feel that they have the right to dominate the South China Seas?
Right.
And I don't think people realize the South China Seas provide the supply chain for 60% of the global population.
And that's because the shipping lanes go through that region, right?
Right.
And, we're talking, Asia to Europe and Asia to like Saudi Arabia or
the Indo Pacific region.
Sure.
Yeah.
But also, from Saudi Arabia or the Gulf, the oil regions, right, to Asia, right? So traffic goes from Europe and North Africa to China, as well as maybe even, the United States and Canada shipping things into wherever. Okay. So there's a lot of shipping traffic through that region.
Yeah.
But also you pointed out to me that the 60% of the global population is also in that region.
Well, the South China Seas provide the supply chain to
60%. Okay, all right. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Okay, all right, I understand that.
So it's like a road, but except that it's made of water.
It's a water road.
It's a shipping channel. It's a channel. So the South China Seas are also comprised of a bunch of islands. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the Chinese military has occupied, I want to say 27 islands. Don't quote me on that, but almost all of them, if not all of them, with their military, with the Chinese military. So not only do you have Rex Tillerson over here back anywhere from 2014 all the way up through his time as Secretary of State, which was, 2017 to 2018, screaming about how China wants to dominate this waterway, this region.
Well,
but then you've got suddenly the Chinese military are setting up operations on every island. Things are really heating up in the South China Sea.
And it's Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping is
Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
I think he basically said, "Well, the word China is in it. It's ours." Okay. No, I'm joking about that, but I think that is really their attitude is, if the United States can do it, then so can we.
Right.
The United States, since the 19th century, since the...
it's pretty much dominated the...
Well, I mean, they
want.
basically said, the Monroe Doctrine basically said, the Western Hemisphere is ours, and you can't, Europe, meaning, because that's where the power was at the time. Europe, you cannot come and come over here and do anything other than maintain your colonies, right? And it's what they've been using since then to keep that was sort of the basis for the conflict in the the War of Pigs and the missile crisis, right?
So during 2013,
Or the Bay of Pigs. I'm sorry. Yeah.
during 2013 and 2014, Biden and Kerry, Vice President Biden, and at the time, Secretary of State John Kerry were making a lot of trips to China. A lot of trips to China.
Well, Kerry was Secretary of State.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, so, that makes... I know, I'm just reiterating.
So they were making a lot of trips to China, and they were not... They were basically turning a blind eye to the fact that our existential enemy was occupying this major thoroughfare, this major waterway that supplied 60% of the global population, that they were occupying it with their military.
What were you saying, Julie? What are you saying, Julie? They were doing deals on the sly?
I don't know. So enter the American princelings, which is not a term that I made up, which I would have.
That's a good term.
But this, article that I read all the way back in 2018, which I've carried with me for the last 5 years, and I keep referring to it, refers to Chris Hines, who was the stepson of John Kerry, and Hunter Biden, who is the son of then Vice President Joe Biden. They were selling military technology, U.S. nuclear military technology to China, and they were making a ton of money doing so and filtering it through like slush funds and filtering it through front companies and things like that.
Yeah.
So this goes to show you why Kerry and Biden were spending, John Kerry, then Secretary of State, and Vice President Joe Biden at the time, were going to China like so many times. Like, what's the deal? And everybody assumed it was to broker peace deals. And that Iran was involved with these so-called peace deals, but really what it was to shore down these deals with China, and make these handshake deals, which basically said, we will give you all this technology and we'll use our sons as cover for these various businesses that we can start based on the money you pay us. The Kerrys and the Bidens benefited greatly from this deal. Not to mention it put our national security at risk when you sell military secrets to your existential enemy. So right there, I'm wondering, why the fuck isn't Joe Biden on trial for this?
Right.
This is treason.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, there's no other way to...
and John Kerry, too.
And John Kerry.
And their sons.
Right. So why are they, so it's because we have a corrupt system. And... the point is that these deals were made, this was done, and so what this did, I believe, is it opened up a dialogue about China saying, okay, fine, you can have access to the South China Seas, but we still own it, but you can have access to it because you sold us these military trade secrets, these military nuclear technology trade secrets. So you can have access to the South China Seas, and, we've just paid you a bunch of money, so you're basically on the hook for us, and we're going to pay you to turn a blind eye to the fact that we're occupying the South China Seas with our military bases, and we're also going to pay you to say like your country needs like infrastructure built, like bridges built, or roads repaired or whatever. You're going to use our companies to do that. Our Chinese-based companies will benefit from your need.
Right.
So you will contract with our companies. So basically, this is how you get to be the most powerful nation in the world,
right.
Not through dropping bombs and using, muscle and
military strength,
military strength, but you do it through soft power, which is what China's been doing for ages. But to me, it really came to a head in 2013 and 2014 when this deal was brokered with China and the Bidens and the Kerrys.
So it's interesting because around that time, or maybe a little bit earlier, maybe like 2010, maybe a little earlier than that, I heard a lot of noise in the liberal media channels like NPR, where you'd fall asleep, but no, where they were talking about how much we owed China, how much money we've borrowed from China, and that if they ever have a drought or some sort of situation where they cannot raise enough food for themselves, that basically they're going to take all of ours because we owe them so much money. Okay, that never came to fruition because that's not the way China operates. They operate through soft power, as you said. The whole Belt and Road thing is all about accessing resources while helping people.
Sure. Of course.
They go into Africa, they go into South America. They have South America growing their food, right? And they have Africa supplying them with resources. Right.
All of those minerals that are
right.
rich in Africa.
And they and in this article, they talk about how Biden and Hines are hip deep in these deals that are being brokered where mines in there was a copper mine in Africa that was purchased, and they used Hines and Biden, and I don't have this exact. I forget exactly what was going on with that, as sort of a shell company to purchase this or to subsidize it or something like that. The other thing that was going on was, and so basically, to illustrate what I'm going to say next, is that they are now treating the United States as maybe an African country or whatever, where they're initiating Belt and Road type of actions and activities and business partnerships and things like that. In order to move things forward. So the thing that I'm thinking about that was mentioned in the article is that they purchased a company. They bought a bunch of, what did they call it, like trophy properties or like high visibility properties in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Right, and so this is what I was just looking for. This is why I was trying to find this.
There we go.
So Rosemont Realty. So they used Rosemont Realty, once again, yet another story about how a realty company is used as a as a front for all sorts of corruption. So we just discovered this in Arizona, right? I did an article about it. So
trophy buildings.
Right, so they're considered trophy buildings, and they put the mayor of Santa Fe on the payroll.
Right. And
so this goes this is just embedded so deep that it even goes down to like a small government, like the mayor of Santa Fe.
Right.
Now this is all the way back in 2013 and 2014. Since then, Chris Hines and Hunter Biden have parted ways, according to mainstream media.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And it's because of this. I'll just show this to you if I can find it. It's because of this. This right here is a Senate.gov file, like a PDF that talks about the corruption. So it's the U.S. Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. And look at this, Hunter Biden is named.
Wow.
Okay. So, and people are talking about this, of course. And, they also bring up Chris Hines, which is, what we're talking about. And, this may not be a story that people are unaware of. What I'm trying to say is what we're talking about is people are fully aware of these deals, the selling of the United States nuclear military technology to China, through, and then creating these fake companies.
Well, there was something else that was mentioned in the article, and it had to do with it. They didn't mention this, but I brought it up when we were talking about it, you and I. That they had bought an aluminum company, and there was something else about you were talking about nuclear technologies, but also this aluminum company. And I think that the reason that they invested in Santa Fe so bluntly, and boldly, is because that mine could very well be in New Mexico.
I see.
Because there are resources like that in that region, and so I'm just guessing. They did not say that specifically in this article, but I kind of connected the dots, and this may be the case. I don't know. Why Santa Fe, New Mexico, of all places?
I know, right?
Right.
So
I mean, that's the thing that makes the most sense. But also, I mentioned that the nuclear testing used to take place out in that area as well. So there's a lot of things that could be going on that haven't been surfaced, that we're not aware of.
Right.
That have not been surfaced. So anyway.
So I guess the point of, and the whole point of this is not to go too far deep into it, but to just say, why the hell is it that the Secretary of State and the Vice President can turn a blind eye when your existential enemy has created, military operations in the South China Seas and is basically dictating what is, like who can go through the South China Seas and who can't? Not only that, you fast forward all the way up to 2023, as soon as like a few weeks ago, they installed trackers. So the Chinese military installed trackers in the South China Seas so that, say somebody like, say, a Canadian oil company goes and starts drilling in the South China Seas, they'll say something like this. Because China is all about negotiating power and soft power and corporate hegemony, China will say something like this. So, Canada, I see that you're in our waterways, drilling our oil. That's fine. Go ahead and do that. What are you going to give us in return?
We get 20% of your take home or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like,
and also, you have a jobs program where you need to build out maybe train infrastructure in Toronto, or you need to build out, more roads, because, Canada, wide open spaces and all that. You need to build out more roads. Great. Looking over here, I've got this great road company, this Chinese-based road company that can come in and do the job for you. So Canadian jobs would then suffer. Like, this is how you take over the world.
Yeah. Or hey, it looks like your University of Saskatchewan has a nice nuclear physics program, and it would be great if you could hire some professors from our country to teach it and to infiltrate and to whatever, right? Oh, that's a nice looking drilling rig you got there in our waters. Be a shame if anything happened to it. Given that they have all this military, like literally pointing at anybody that goes through the waterways. Right. God knows what they've got going on. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, like with the narrative that was going around about, if China collects their debts from us, we'll be broke or we'll be starving because they're going to take all our food. But this is what I'm getting at. Right. These deals are the way to pay that back.
Right. So you basically, you bring in a Chinese contingent to take over American jobs because of deals that are brokered.
Or you just you take over, and it's indirectly too, because it's not that they're coming in and displacing workers.
Not necessarily.
What they're doing is they're only hiring specific workers for. Now they might hire a bunch of grunt workers, who are maybe in a union and do the grunt work, but you've got at the top, you've got the Chinese.
They'll sit on the board.
Or be the managers or whatever.
The shareholders, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's not like they're coming in and so again, it doesn't look obvious. And it doesn't look like they're taking away American jobs, but they are. Right. And they're also just infiltrating into the country. And again, it's through soft power and influence.
Right. And so, there's a lot of fear narrative. There's a lot of stuff about, China COVID. And I got to say, like, people who are out there, claiming to have all this, knowledge, they're not looking at these business deals.
Right.
These basic soft power business deals where corporate, these corporate handshake deals that are going on, that's where you're handing over pieces of your own country to China. That's where you're doing it.
And
through
I think
China's soft power.
Exactly. And I think that, as we've talked about before, there are different factions within the global, politics, geopolitics,
right.
And various factions that oversee different things, but and rivalries that occur. And something that you pointed out to me is that, it could be that the reason that certain pundits out there are pointing to the Chinese government as being responsible for COVID and all these other things is it's propaganda and fake news, fake headlines, whatever, perpetrated by other factions such as, I don't know, the World Bank.
Yeah, exactly. And China's basically like, go ahead and try to blame us for COVID. Go ahead and try to use this lame story about a wet market and a bat. Or even try to say that we had labs in Wuhan that released, a biological program. Go ahead and say all of that. We'll go ahead and let you.
Because we basically have you by the balls.
Because we have you by the balls anyway.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Through our corporate deals, and also through this Hunter Biden and Chris Heinz deal. And that is Heinz, as in the Pittsburgh Heinz family. John Kerry married the Heinz heiress.
Right.
So here we are in Pittsburgh, sort of in the middle of this
once again,
hot story. So where we're literally watching our country being handed over in chunks to China. So another thing that Trump did, he did a few good things, actually. As we all know, he tried to pull us out of the World Health Organization, but Biden got us right back in, and that's a whole other hydra of bullshit. I'm not saying it's bullshit. It's definitely something you want to look at, but it's just bullshit that we have to look at. It's bullshit that we have to even talk about it. But one thing that Trump said back in 2018 was, why the fuck is China controlling the operations out of a major port in Israel? This is not good. The U.S. 6th Navy Fleet is docked in Haifa, which is a major port city in Israel. It's docked at the port there. It's been docked there for half a century or more, maybe. Why the hell is China taking over the operations? This is an existential threat. China is our existential enemy. Why is it that our alleged ally, Israel, is working deals with our existential enemy and giving them jobs? Why didn't we get the bid? Right. Why couldn't we have Americans over there operating the port of Haifa and taking care of the U.S. 6th Navy Fleet?
Especially since the 6th Navy Fleet has been docked and operating that port of Haifa since Israel became a country.
Exactly.
So what the fuck, right?
Exactly.
So what's going on there?
Trump was, bellicose, and he was pretty pissed off about that, whether he really was or not, but he sure did make a stink. And I actually think he was legitimately pissed off because this deal happened under his watch. Mm-hmm. It happened during his administration, and that really pissed him off. Because he's all about America first, America great, America, America, America. Next thing you know, America just undermines itself by once again handing a huge power over to our existential enemy, China. So you have to understand geographically where the port of Haifa is. Haifa, Israel, is located on the Mediterranean Sea, and if you're standing at the port and you're looking out over the dock and you're looking out over the Mediterranean Sea, if you have Superman eyes, they will land directly on Italy. Mm-hmm. So Italy is literally within the line of sight of Haifa. Israel, it's a straight shot across the Mediterranean Sea. So I imagine, okay, this is me speculating because I'm not an idiot. I imagine that Israel is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're supposed to be your ally, United States. Why did you just let your existential enemy take over operations at yours/ours allies port? Wait a minute. What the hell's going on?
Okay, first of all, you're assuming that Israel didn't have a choice in the matter.
Right. No, what I'm saying is I'm sure the leadership in Italy.
Oh, in Italy. I think you said
That's what
Israel.
No, I'm saying
Oh,
Italy.
okay, Italy.
Italy is directly in the line of sight of the Port of Haifa.
Sure, of course.
So
Well,
Italy
yeah, if you're
knows what's
Superman,
going
right,
on.
yeah.
Italy knows what's going on and says, wait a minute, you've got your existential enemy now operating, and managing this port where your big giant, sixth largest Navy fleet in the whole world is docked.
Right.
What are you doing?
Right.
And so this created what I call, the real issue, which I've been talking about since 2018, long before COVID. And COVID acted as cover for this. So right about the time that this got really hot and a hot war was starting to
kind of bubble up.
Rumoring, at least if you read like the South China Times or the India Times, they were
reporting on that.
They were reporting saying this is a hot button issue.
And I remember you did an audio about that very thing.
And I wrote like 3 blog posts about it as well, but nobody reads. So
but you didn't see any mainstream media.
No mainstream media about this at all. So in the India Times and the South China Post or whatever it's called, they were talking about this in like 2018. Trump was pretty pissed off about it. Nobody was talking about it. So I think what happened was the COVID operation, I'm not saying that it's completely fake, but what I'm saying is that the COVID operation was one of the things that acted as cover for what happened in Italy. Because right about that, when all this is happening, Italy shut down their cruise ships. They didn't shut down their, you don't shut down the most, lucrative business venture that you have in your country,
right?
Because Italy is basically run on tourism, right?
Yeah.
And they have all these ports and all these cruise ships, and they shut down the cruise ship industry. And I think what they did is they shut it out to work a deal to figure out where the United States could move at least a part of the fleet that was docked at a port that's now run by our existential enemy. We basically had to get out of there.
Mm-hmm. Well, we heard, it's interesting because we heard, it's always funny how there's these little factoids and things that like pop up, not factoids, but like events and items that you kind of pick up here and there that coincide with other things that allow you to see the bigger picture. Right. So we heard this interview or this talk from, of all things, an English or an American mystery writer who lived in Venice, Italy.
Right. And
right around the time of the COVID thing, she said that all the cruise ships pulled out of the port of Venice,
like really quickly. And so
they closed operations.
And then they closed operations. And I think it's because Italy felt this existential threat by proxy that our existential enemy was operating a port that's directly in its line of sight.
Yeah.
Okay. How do they know that? So this is not how China operates. China would never do this. But how do they know that China simply wouldn't take over our fleet and, send missiles over to Italy? We're talking, it was a really hot button issue, a really hot issue. So Italy, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, made the decision to shut down their tourism industry, move their fleets, move their ships, their cruise ships, and I think it opened up for some of the U.S. Sixth Navy to move their ships over and dock in in Italy's docks, because our ally Israel, who's Italy is also our ally, but had struck a deal with China,
right?
Which is such a stab in the back to the United States.
And that's classic,
That's classic.
Because it's like, because it's like, the few spies that have been, arrested over the last, 75 years. I remember a couple, and I think it was in the 80s, and I don't remember their names, but they were basically spying for Israel.
Right.
And they got convicted, even though they were American citizens. I think they were convicted for treason. It's very vague and shadowy in my mind, but I kind of remember that. But the other thing, too, to point out is that this, even though there's a great distance between the Port of Haifa and say Sicily and Italy, right?
Right.
It's close enough to where the Sixth Fleet offices, or the operations offices for the fleet, were in Italy. They were separated from the actual
ships,
right? And I have a feeling that's because of they're because of the whole Pearl Harbor thing, from World War II.
Right. So
I don't
they
know
want
for sure,
administrative offices and your and ground control, whatever, to be separate from where the actual ships will launch from. Got it.
Yeah.
So I think what happened was you had a
close enough but far away.
Close enough but far enough away, right?
Yeah.
So you have a culmination of events. You've got this hot button issue going on where, once again, our existential enemy is now managing our military, our U.S. Navy, at least the Sixth Fleet for the U.S. Navy.
Potentially managing that. What they did was they took over the management of that
of
port.
The dock, and the port.
And the Navy moved out.
Right. Well, we assume it did. Like, they've never been able to really confirm it.
Yeah, no, I haven't either. Yeah.
But the only reason that I say they probably did is because of the fact that Italy, out of nowhere, despite having like enormous success in their tourism industry, suddenly shut down their tourism industry.
Yeah.
Like, just shut it down.
Right.
Why would you do that at the height of your success?
Right, and it wasn't because of COVID. Right?
No, but COVID was an operation that. I think it's actually okay.
Well,
I know that it's
going red.
I know that it's a little bit red, but I've noticed that when we go back and listen to it, even when it's red, that we still can't quite hear it.
We're talking about our microphone and the light on it.
So the point is that I'm making a point, so I want to make sure I'm heard. The point is that the COVID operation came along like right about this time. So you had, COVID acted as a nice cover. Everybody stay inside. And COVID hit Italy first. Right. Everybody needs to stay inside and shelter in place. There's a big old virus out there. Everybody needs to stay in the cruise ships. Don't move. And I think it was so that they could rearrange, where they were going to dock the fleets and stuff. People were on the cruise ships when the cruise ships were like, yeah, you're not going to be able to dock off board at this particular dock or this particular port like we told you on your ticket. It's going to be in some other port because virus. Because virus. And really what it was probably to allow a rearranging of where these ships were going to go. And I also want to say that, I use that term a lot, existential, but I do believe that it sends a message globally to all of our allies that the United States is weakened by China by allowing China to manage the port where the sixth largest U.S. Navy fleet is docked, at that port. So it doesn't send a strong message to our allies that we've got it under control when we can't even get, so we've got China occupying the South China Seas militarily now. We've got trackers in the South China Seas so that China can track anybody who's, in their opinion, invading waters that they shouldn't be invading sovereign waters, or trying to move a product through those waters. This is why I think we had a real issue with our supply chain, if we ever really did have an issue with the supply chain, which I don't think we did. I think it was all just, fuckery by management. That's all. United States fucking with United States citizens. But I'm willing to say that because of this little, problem in the South China Seas where they supply 60% of the global population, that there may have been a problem with receiving some product as a result of this real hot issue in the South China Seas.
Right.
So I really think that so much of what we hear over the last 10 years or so has been such a distraction from the fact that China is developing soft power techniques and brokering corporate business deals and is basically expanding around the globe. This is how you get your your next global leader.
Right.
This is it. This is how you do it. And just because they operate they manage the operations out of the port of Haifa, Israel now, they probably manage many ports of many of our allied countries, you have to assume.
Right. So, as we pointed out, there's different factions, in different large, any large organization, whether it be, a school or a religion or a corporation or whatever the case may be, you have different factions. And so we feel that, as a result of what we've learned regarding the Bank of International Settlements and their dealings with basically taking over, basically the same way China's been doing it with other places, but taking over organizations like the WHO, the World Health Organization, and implementing different mandates and programs and policies in order to basically get paid back all the money that is out there that various countries owe them. I mean, we're in debt, in the trillions, and and what we've established is that the COVID operation was a way for the Bank of International Settlements, using various means like the U.S. military to run operations in order to get that money back.
Right.
Okay.
So
the fact that China got blamed, right, and they started this whole thing going on in Italy, like what we've been pointing out. There's these weird sort of coincidences or correlations, I should say, going on, right, that indicate to us anyway, and allow us to speculate based on what we know, that this other faction that's trying to stop China from doing what they want to do is the Bank of International Settlements. Now, that said, they also are in cahoots with China, because these things work that way. They may partner with China for some things, but try to stop them from doing other things in other ways.
Right.
Nothing is monolithic. Nothing is black and white. Nothing is totally one way or the other. These things always overlap. That's why we have such things as Venn diagrams.
Right. I like Venn diagrams.
I know you do.
I do. No, I'm repeating Kamala. I like Venn diagrams. She's so stupid. Anyway, so she's trying to appeal to the nerd.
I guess
the nerds out there.
Yeah.
So the point is that I think what happened was the World Bank, the Bank of International Settlements, got they watched this this slow-moving train wreck of China occupying the South China Seas militarily. Haifa, Israel, opening up their operations to China, allowing China to manage them. And we're paying attention to what, say, the India Times were writing about and what the South China Post, or whatever that's called, was writing about as well, which is that, we might have a hot war. And what does it mean when there's a hot war? It means all of your country's money, all of your funding streams go into that war. And so that means your debtors don't get paid.
Right.
That means that the people who have funded you this whole time to basically keep your country afloat don't get paid, anything back.
If anything, you're borrowing more to fund the war.
You have to borrow more. And they were just like, oh, hell no. They saw the writing on the wall with this, bizarre little power play going on that China was making. So they started the COVID operation in order to ensure that they would get, they could see some,
and
payback for their loans.
Well, I think, this operation was probably in the works already.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But it was just that they were like, well, let's launch it now.
Yeah. I really do believe that it wasn't supposed to be launched as early. I'm talking about the COVID operation. Yeah. That it wasn't supposed to be launched as early as it was.
That's because, and that points to all the inconsistencies that were going on early on, and like why not all the supplies were out there, like the stickers on the floors at the the stores, like they weren't quite printed yet. All the other stuff was ready to go, but not everything, right?
Right, yeah.
So those early inconsistencies, I think, point to the fact that they launched this thing sooner than they expected to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think they were going to launch it for the reasons that we're laying out now originally, right? Originally, they were just going to do it anyway.
Right.
But I think that with this the fact that Hunter Biden and Chris Hines and Joe Biden and John Kerry basically did these deals that basically got America to bend over. And this is funny because you were saying to me like you were mimicking the World Bank or the Bank of International Settlements, like, America, what the fuck are you doing?
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, I really feel that they're like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you playing like
you've never taken it from behind.
China.
You've never taken it from behind from anyone, and now you're doing this.
You're doing it with China, really? Like, so I think the World Bank was like, fine, we better unleash our COVID operation.
Right.
And, Bill Gates and all those people were super happy about that.
Sure, of course. They got big boons, and so and again, it's like it's all the various factions that come into play, and everybody loves to point their finger at the World Economic Forum when really they're the clowns in the car that come out in the circus that are between acts. They're there to distract you from the fact that they're changing scenes and changing sets and getting the elephants to come out while it takes the time to get those elephants out into the ring, right? Yeah. Exactly.
So you need the clown car to come in
and distract you from that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. People don't know how circuses work, and so if you don't know how circuses work, then you're gonna have a hard time keeping up.
Right. So they're the marketing wing of the billionaires.
The marketing wing. It's bad enough. Yeah. It's bad. It's a bad marketing wing. I get it.
They're scary, and that's why they look like. That's why Klaus Schwab looks like Dr. Evil. There's a reason for that. It's
Yeah.
So
totally.
Yeah. So and I don't know. I think have we kind of like.
I think we've hit our we've come full circle on this.
Right.
Basically, what you're looking at is, China isn't going to swallow up your land. China is not going to, dogmatically, like, try to
control the world or control you.
Control you, but China is, working deals with every country and business deals with every country, and that's where the power lies.
Sure.
This whole business of, all of these different social movement organizations, whether you have Black Lives Matter or the trans movement or whatever, or mental health movement, whatever, all these social movement organizations, people label it like that looks like Marxism or that looks like communism, and then they immediately, because they say that it looks like communism, they immediately attach it to China. China doesn't give a shit about your Black Lives Matter movement or your trans movement.
Well, that said,
or
I think with their takeover, they will wield political influence and over your country, right? Like ours, And, it doesn't help that the leadership of Black Lives Matter came out and said, we're professional Marxists, right? And the way they act and the way that it looks like, a new version of the Cultural Revolution, right? It's like Cultural Revolution 2.0, and it's Black Lives Matter going out there and doing what they do. It doesn't help. I think that's also done deliberately. And I keep coming back to those other factions that are probably directing that to make it look like it could be something that's coming from a communist country or what have you, and I'm glad you brought that up, because something that I've noticed and you've noticed too is the pundits that are out there going, the COVID operation was started in China and then blah 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 blah, and like pointing it back to China and trying to use that as a way of getting us upset and paying attention to what China's doing, when really it was this other operation I think that was going on. But I want to point out that the language that they use, and we have not been using that because we feel that it's truer to not get people upset by saying the Chinese Communist Party and the Chi-Coms and the and like using this like kicked up language and appealing to your most fearful self, or the basest way of getting people to be afraid and kicking people's emotions up by using the word communist in conjunction with China. Yeah, sure, there is the Chinese Communist Party in China, but there's also the Chinese government, the state, and there's also then the Chinese people. And so we need to understand that what's going on is state-run corporations that are run by the government. The Communist Party is part of the government, but it isn't just the government, right? And so we need to, take a step back and stop. Now, I'm not an apologist for communism or for the Chinese communists or whatever, right? Because we're not communists, and we don't, it's not part of our world, right? And we don't, go that way, right? And nor do we support any state. Right. Right.
We don't support anything.
Right.
Including libertarians.
Right. So, as Black Flag anarchists.
People automatically think that when you say that you're, not supportive of communism, that you must be libertarian.
Or something.
And we're not libertarian either.
Right.
So really, please, stop trying to, box us.
Right.
Like, just knock it out.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's like it's important to listen to the language that people use and what they omit and what they use in order to get your attention and in order to get you to be persuaded by their side. And it really irritates me when people go there, when they use that language in order to get you a little freaked out so that they can sell you what they're trying to tell you.
Right. And the thing about it is, too, if it was a real threat, if there was, a real threat with the Chinese Communist Party, then the Chinese Communist Party would respond to it. Mm-hmm. The Chinese Communist Party would start putting out propaganda that says, the United States needs to stop scapegoating us and stop vilifying us. But you know what? China is, and the government, the leadership over there is basically saying, go ahead, say what you're going to say.
Right.
It means absolutely nothing. I just scored another, $75 billion deal with the Bidens again.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? They don't care. They're making business deals, and they're vastly becoming, a global powerhouse.
Right. And we talk about the quote unquote globalists, people do, as, playing the long game. That's nothing compared to what China and the Chinese culture has been doing for thousands of years. They look at the world through the lens of the long game.
Oh, yes.
The big long game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because this is a culture that has been around for thousands of years.
Right.
And that has had dynasties of rulers come and go in that time, and they last for hundreds of years.
Right.
And so they look at the world at the long game.
And they're looking at the United States in these piddly, ridiculous little stories. Oh, you want to tell a story about how we, flipped on a switch and turned on 5G in Wuhan and suddenly 4,000 people dropped dead overnight? So you want to blame 5G and you want to associate us with being this tyrannical, authoritarian, killer government that would do this to our people? Okay, go ahead. Mm-hmm. It's not true. Because they're busy scoring deals. They're busy making deals. And they're doing what they do.
And I think that's more dangerous than what they're being accused of.
Right, exactly. Of course it is.
Yeah.
You want to say that we were part of a lab that, somehow released a biologically made toxin or poison onto the planet, and you want to blame us for this? Go ahead.
Well,
all of these stupid little stories, China is not even responding to them at all because there's no there.
Right.
They think of Americans as probably the idiot kids in the sandbox, you know?
Well, and all those stories I think are a good indication of deflection, right?
Total deflection.
So, what the U.S. government is doing.
It's far worse than what China did.
Well, in
my opinion,
via the military is exactly what they're accusing China of doing.
I know, exactly.
That's what I'm saying by deflection.
He who smelt it dealt it,
right?
Yeah. That's basically what it is. So, the U.S. is busy talking about how there's a Chinese lab. Well, actually, the lab comes out of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. The U.S. is busy talking about how China is full of propaganda. Well, actually, it was the United States that propagandized you could, save yourself from getting COVID by, doing some things with and drinking something. Maybe that was the Canadian propaganda. But you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, all the propaganda is coming from us,
right? Not
China. All the things that we're accusing China of doing, we're doing first. And I'm not saying that they're pure as the driven snow. Of course not.
No,
they're making millions and billions of dollars off of immiserating the global population, but not just China. Germany as well, the United States as well, the tech industry especially. You've got to look at home first. You can't just start, screaming China, China, China when you're not looking around your own neighborhood and you need to go talk to your leadership, your local board at your local council in your local cities and states and neighborhoods where you live, and you need to just confront them and say, are you ever going to violate personal sovereignty ever again for any reason? And if they say yes, then get them out of there. And if they say, no, we learned our lesson, this is a violation of your rights, we're never going to lock you down again, we're never going to force, inoculate or even recommend it, then that's a good thing. You know what I'm saying? That's where you need to look.
Right. Exactly. And I want to circle back a little bit, talking about the pundits who use the kicked up language to get people all scared. Mm-hmm. You'll notice that they're also never ever talking about how the U.S. military had a hand in this COVID operation.
Yeah, the U.S. military was the tool that the Bank of International Settlements and the WHO used.
Right.
But the U.S. military not only was the tool, they actually had deployed contracts with the pharmaceutical companies and made it so that those pharmaceutical companies would be immune from any lawsuits or any damages. They would never, ever face any kind of pushback from anyone. The U.S. military sort of acted as cover while at the same time acted as a blunt force. So cover and a blunt force. And then you have our own government, basically rendering Congress, who would typically put a stop to all this and say, whoa, stop this. Congress has been rendered impotent, so... Through
laws that have been passed over the decades.
And have just been... So basically, like Catherine Watts says, we live in a place of non-law law. So, an anti-law law.
Yeah.
These are non-laws that they used. They used laws that they claim that they exist in order to get away with everything, but they actually aren't really lawful laws.
It's sort of like mandates, right? Yeah. Where the mandates were used as a
and mandates are just recommendations.
Right.
They're not laws.
Right.
Laws have to have a code and a vote and all this.
Right.
So all of that was circumvented. And we saw this clearly, and I think a lot of this circumvention has been going on for decades. It's just that it all became very transparent through diligent, higher-minded individuals like us, like other people who are doing all the right research, where it suddenly became very clear and it made all the sense in the world that this isn't the first time that they've created workarounds. to violate citizen or, human beings' sovereignty.
Right.
It's not the first time they've done that.
Right.
Yeah. And they've just been building into that weakness in our structure for so long. It's become, like Swiss cheese. It's just so brittle now.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing to plant your flag in.
Yeah. Yeah, so to
You know?
speak. Yeah. Or to anchor to, right? So,
Right.
and that's why everything feels so funky and weird, and
Yeah.
it's hard for people to feel like there's any sort of cohesion in the world.
But at the same time, the world is still operating fairly normally.
Yeah.
It's basically operating in this I have to check off my boxes type of
Sure.
system where you've got the buses are still basically running on time. The grocery stores are still open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. The movie theaters are still running the movies. The bookstores are still open. The travel plans to all over where you want to visit are still. Everybody's still checking off their boxes and running in capitalism. So while you know that you're under this kind of weird shift in the world, you're also looking at the world and nothing really has changed. The thing that's really changed, the thing that's changed most about the world for me personally, is the death and disability that I've seen with my own two eyes. The ripping apart of people's lives and people's bodies, like literally, where people
And
have been,
personally, you've seen this.
and I've seen it personally, and so that's the only thing that's changed in my life, where the health of people day to day has just plummeted. Like we used to be at, we were obese and all that stuff, but mostly we were a pretty healthy society, but the health is just, plummeted.
I think,
and death has risen.
Right.
And that's the only thing that's different. Other than that, you can still go get your pizza and your beer, and you
Yeah.
can still go see a movie.
Right.
You can still go to your job.
Right.
For the most part.
Yeah. So, on the surface, everything seems normal, and I think that was intended. Mm-hmm. And I think also, because a lot of these things that are going on are taking place in the background, away from public view, and, at such a high level of, operation, these machinations that are taking place, these well, not only machinations, but these wars that are going on in the background. We all feel it, we just don't see it.
Right.
And I think that's where the anxiety levels kick up, the depression is taking place, the drug use and substance abuse takes place, and then that all gets exploited and weaponized and brought back into the system because hey, you can't let that go by without making some money on it, right?
So we said almost we're looking at March of 2024 is going to be 4 years, and we said on March 13th of 2020 when the national emergency was declared, every little thing that you do is going to be financialized.
Right.
Even your own addictions will be financialized against you.
Right.
So and so I think that this is a good segue into the very last
thing we
want to talk about.
Sure.
And so I want to talk about UFOs and aliens. And I want to encourage people to pay attention to the UFO and alien stories.
Right. Not to necessarily believe them, but to pay attention to it because there's some information in there that they're not really telling you.
Right. So UFO and alien stories have been used for a millennia as a way to make sure that people don't look at what's going on right in front of them.
Yeah.
Don't look at how, your family and your life is falling apart. Look over here up in the sky at this alien or this UFO, and let's go talk all sorts of nonsense about it and distract you. Mm-hmm. So anything that is like, and this is all like a metaphor, stars in the sky, UFOs, animals, birds, like anything that they focus on, insects. Remember when we had like an insect invasion, an alleged insect invasion or whatever? They want you to focus on things that are like up in the sky to keep you from focusing on how they're rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. How's that?
Yeah.
I imagine that on that, maiden and last voyage of the ship, the Titanic, that they had all sorts of people saying, "Oh, look at the big, beautiful stars in the sky. Look up, look up." And meanwhile, you've got the crew like working like crazy to gather all of the lifeboats for and put them in first class. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what's going on.
Right.
They want you to look up at the sky so that they can rearrange the lifeboats for the first class, for first class people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's always a metaphor. That's why I encourage you to pay attention to it, because you know that it means that something is going on.
Do you have any examples that you can use to illustrate?
Well, see, I haven't. All I hear about this is very meta.
Uh-huh.
My only understanding about the UFO alien stories is that they're coming out.
Right.
I don't know what they're about. All I hear is from people, I'm so sick of hearing about the UFO alien stories.
Right. Well,
but I don't know where they're coming from. I know that Tucker Carlson brought it up, but I didn't really pay attention to that.
Yeah.
I didn't hear it. I didn't listen.
Right. And so for decades they were denied by the US government. And now they're being, supported or brought out by the U.S. government.
So that should tell you that the U.S. government is rearranging the deck chairs.
Right, exactly.
Come on.
Well, it reminds me of the movie Repo Man, where, they're looking at like, the equivalent of the Weekly World News in the newsstand, and it's talking about aliens and stuff and crazy stuff. And it centers around the idea of like some dead aliens in the trunk of a Chevy Nova or something, right? And or some old car, and it plays on that whole narrative of the government is hiding alien life forms and flying saucers in Area 51, and this has been part of pop culture for a very long time. I mean, there was the whole Fox series. The FBI agents, what was that called? The
X-Files.
The X-Files, right?
Yeah.
That whole series was based around those ideas.
Sure.
And that kind of narrative. So, this is nothing new, and I think that the government is like now playing on everybody's belief that the aliens exist and that the UFOs exist.
But this is what I'm tired of hearing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of hearing this statement. Oh my God, the alien stories are just so stupid and so dumb. Of course we can't pay attention to that. We need to pay attention to more important things. But what you have to do is even go above the UFO alien stories and look down at them from a way 100,000 foot perch, way up high, and say, why are they telling you the story? Why are they telling you the story about UFOs and aliens? It's because they're doing something in the background, and they really don't want you to see what they're doing.
Right.
They're really gonna, and so when you have your own government starting to talk about how, there could be some likelihood of them or that they could possibly be real, that's when you have to really, really be concerned. That's when you have to be the most engaged. Mm-hmm. Listen. Make sure she doesn't have anything in her mouth. Listen to what they're saying, because they're really, they're really let me just put it to you this way. When I was told, or when I read all these people saying, "Oh no, this is just fake," no, I said, "Uh-oh. This is something we should pay attention to, because they're trotting this out because something really big is going to happen."
Right.
What you're looking at with the UFO alien stories is a metaphor. And what that metaphor tells you is that something foreign and something big and something that is so outside of your human experience and so outside of your traditions is going to be introduced to you.
Yeah.
They're going to attempt to make it normal. And so they're using the UFO alien story as a metaphor for that. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's why you have to pay attention to it. Because what's going to happen is if you don't allow yourself to recognize that they're using the story to introduce this big foreign thing, that when that big foreign thing that's really going to hurt you does come, you're going to be unprepared and traumatized once again, just like you were with COVID. We weren't traumatized with the COVID operation.
No.
You and I.
No.
We just weren't, because we had been watching over the years the various narratives, the various dumb stories that have come out, and we understood that they were metaphors. Not only that, we don't allow ourselves to get traumatized by, say, like mass shooting stories or other kinds of stories. We just don't believe in them. We believe that the COVID operation was a way to, obviously reset the way you think, the way you operate. People are very, very, very sick now, more sick than they've ever been in my entire life. I've never seen so many sick and dead people. The bodies are literally piling up in front of me, So that is something like that. You need to address that. You can't just be a typical American and continue to shove your head in the sand and say, I don't want to hear this, I don't want to know this, I'm too traumatized already. Where's your fucking hubris?
Yeah.
Where's your strength? I mean, I would say that the United States is basically turned into one big military operation through various funding streams and through various emergency declarations, and through the fact that we have, used emergency declarations and in order to fund product functionality, like making product, like the motherboards for AI and stuff, and all these electronics and stuff. The only time an emergency declaration is ever declared is if you're at war and if there is a military threat,
right,
or if there's some sort of threat to your border or your safety. So we're constantly operating under a military operation, and if that's the case, then you need to act like a soldier.
Right, right.
I see a lot of whinging and a lot of crying and a lot of trauma and a lot of infighting and a lot of stupidity. And it's like, if the United States is going to keep doing this to you and keep declaring emergencies and keeping your funding stream going so that, you can still get your lattes and shit, then act like a goddamn soldier. Act like you're in the military, because we're occupied by our own military now. So act like it. Like, I don't mean to be like mean or anything,
right.
but
Well,
whatever.
Act at least like the French Resistance, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
And I don't mean go out and get guns. What I mean is try to understand what it is you can do to counteract what is being perpetrated on you.
People don't know what to do, though. I'm convinced after 3 years that when we say you need to do what you need to do, like, be like water and smooth out the rough edges and all that, they don't understand what words mean. So the story of the UFO and the aliens, instead of going, oh God, and throwing up your hands and walking away and saying this is just stupid and ridiculous, confront it.
What is this really saying?
Confront it.
What are these stories really saying?
And say, okay, show me. Let's talk about the UFO aliens story, government. Let's talk about it. And I swear, within the response, you will find the key answer. And it will be, it will be something else. I really think that the funding stream that was opened up to make all, and Nexium got, $65 billion or something, right?
Yeah.
The funding stream that opened up to make AI is in direct correlation with this UFO alien story. They are going to create AI, artificial intelligence, and make you think that it's an alien invasion or something like that, and put the fear of God in you.
And we were talking about how we thought that AI is going to be very instrumental in the upcoming elections via fucking with numbers, but also deep fakes and and sending you messages based on your worldview.
We are a laughing stock right now. If other countries are paying attention to me right now, we're a laughing stock. Basically, we just opened up a hundreds of billions of dollars of funding stream to make fake memes, to make AI so that, we can fuck with people's minds. Like, that's ridiculous. We have crumbling roads, we have terrible schools, we have horrible hospitals and horrible infrastructure. We've got, just disease, bacterial infections and disease is running rampant in parts of San Francisco because of the fentanyl crisis. But oh no, we need hundreds of billion dollars to be funded into, artificial intelligence operations
via the CHIPS Act and
the CHIPS Act in order to make silly memes. So because election, like, this is literally what's going on. We're a joke at this point. Like, I'm getting off on a tangent.
Yeah, but I think
we are a joke.
And I think that the stories surrounding AI and its dangers, the dangers of AI, are equally metaphorical and distracting. So, like the alien stories, these stories about AI, taking over the world and killing off the human population, right? Because it's trying to find the most efficient way to answer a question. So the way to do that is to get rid of all the CPU usage on the planet, and to do that, it gets rid of the humans. This is literally what has been reported by the New York Times as a possible scenario for the result of AI going rogue. Okay, or they're saying that AI is dangerous because it can put out racist content and all this like bullshit that gets you distracted from AI is coming. AI is not good, but they don't say why it's not good, and the reason that it's not good is because it's beyond our comprehension, or it's in a place where it benefits the capitalists who are putting it out there, and they want you to accept it on one hand by saying these are these dangerous things that can take place if we don't control it. So they control it in a way that when you use it, it's nice and it's fuzzy, and you can make really cool graphics of big busted pixie girls, and have it write an essay for you on whatever subject.
That's what the $100 billion AI infusion.
Okay, but it's not about what it's really going to be doing, which is going to be manipulating your media, manipulating how you think, where you work, how you work, who you work for, and every other part of your life. That's what they're really trying to distract us from in the AI stories. I don't even know what they plan to do because they are not releasing that, but they certainly are going out of their way to distract you from looking into or seeing what it is they're planning, just like the alien stories.
Yeah, just like the alien story. So it's all a metaphor, and it's all a ton of money that's going to be funneled into these unicorn companies and these tech companies that aren't really going to do anything. It's just basically an excuse to give people a bunch of money.
And
that's it.
More box checking.
And more box checking, and it's not going to threaten you, and it's not bad. And hey, look, if they can create some sort of, some sort of believability around the UFO alien story by using AI, great. That's just, that's a bonus.
Right.
And that is not, we're not, we're also, we stopped making weapons. We're no longer making weapons for the military. All the money is going into basically the fuckery of the United States citizenry industrial complex.
You and I personally are no longer making weapons for the U.S. military?
The United States is no longer...
So there's no longer weapons factories or ammunition or weapons factories in the United States? Is that what you're saying?
From what I understand. Like certain places where they're not making them anymore.
Where things used to be manufactured.
This is what's baffling even like mainstream media. It's like, why did we stop our manufacturing of our U.S. military? It's because the military and the government and the tech industry and all of the capitalists and the investors, the venture capitalists and the stakeholders and all these people are making more money at fucking with you. Mm-hmm. Literally, that's all it is. It's not about, border safety or anything like that, like you would think. Mm-hmm. It's literally just like taking all that money that used to go into making, F-47s or whatever, or used to go into making like
tanks or airplanes,
planes or airplanes or whatever, are going into making big busted pixie chicks on TikTok,
right?
Through AI.
Well, and I think,
literally, that's literally what's happening.
I think what they
think we're a joke,
right? Well, they're doing what the state has always done, is perpetrate violence on its own people through the military apparatus. But I think they're taking that and going one step further, and it's the fuckery is going to become unrecognizable, mm-hmm. because it's going to be so subtle and happen in the background so much. I think Facebook is a good example of where it's going. They do use artificial intelligence agents in order to feed you content or keep you away from content or whatever, as long as it gets you to a place where you're engaging with the platform so that you see ads or you do whatever it is they need you to do at that moment, right? And I think that along those lines, it will follow that same sort of path, except it will be much more potent, and it will affect us in our daily lives as opposed to our online social media lives.
Oh, really? You think it's going to affect us in our daily lives?
I think so.
You think so? In our real life?
I think that's
real
okay.
life.
Let me put it this way. I think that the potential is there.
Got it.
And that's what they would. That's what they would like to do. That's my speculation.
Yeah.
Based on what I know. Yeah.
Yeah. I just feel like this. It's like I feel like this has really just become a big joke, like a big circus. Like all I see this country as being is just people just running around like chickens with their heads cut
mm-hmm.
off, and
mm-hmm.
nobody knows what the hell is going on. I'm talking about people in leadership, and that all of us down here on the ground who are trying to make sense of it, who are trying to make sense of the absolute ridiculous, and then not only that, you've got people that are afraid of it. It's like, why are you afraid of nonsense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is nothing but just like total nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can even see that nonsense coming through in the propaganda via the portrayal of the sitting president, Joe Biden. Right?
Yeah, or the January 6th nonsense,
right?
Which was all theater and
but
stage.
Let me illustrate my point, and that is, they go out of their way to call him
Sure.
What is it?
Dementia
Joe.
Mm-hmm.
They show you videos of him kind of wandering around and not really knowing where he's going.
Tripping.
Going up to Obama, trying to talk to him, and Obama, ignoring him. And all this bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. And some of the tripping videos might be real, but because he is in his 80s after all. But at the same time, though, when he falls, he doesn't really hurt himself. So it might be a pratfall. Who knows? Yeah. But the point is that, this is yet another distraction and a means of getting you to look at something while they do something else.
Right. I think the story, we can end here. I'll finish with this. I think the story of the January 6th theatrical insurrection, which was
alleged
insurrection, which is basically, from what I understand, I don't know anything about this, but from what I understand, Trump is indicted for having to do with January 6th or something. But the point is that it was pre-recorded. It was like a bunch of actors running around acting like crazy fools, mm-hmm. right? And so that was them telling you. So I watched the footage and I go, oh, okay. So basically what they're telling us, and I watched this, okay, this was before COVID. What they're telling us is, because it was January 6, 2020?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the inauguration.
Yeah. So it was before the national emergency was declared.
Yeah.
What they're telling us is that this is what Congress and all your leadership look like. This is what they're doing.
Actually, it was after the
was it
national 2021.
2021?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
okay,
no,
so,
I was just thinking back. I'm like, well, wait a minute. No, it's 2021.
yeah, so it was 2021. Right, because a lot of people had masks on because they were actors and didn't want to be recognized. Right. So if you look at the footage and you don't look at it like in the way that you're looking at it, but you look at it as a metaphor, it tells you that it's a clown show, that this whole country is now being run by a clown show.
Yeah.
That's what January 6th was really about. Just like the UFOs are telling you, they want you to look up in the sky and look at the pretty stars in the sky while the Titanic is going down, so they can rearrange the lifeboats for the rich people.
Well,
so that's what's going on. And so I think that the January 6th thing was like, so you got the guy with the bull or the buffalo head, whatever, you got the guy on Nancy Pelosi's desk. That's all just like a metaphor for the fact that the toddlers are running the show.
Right.
Like they're just running around, eating what they want, making deals, doing what they want, pissing in the hallway, acting like crazy.
Running out into the street.
Running into the street like crazy people. That's what's going on in Congress right now.
Yeah.
Like it's a metaphor.
I think also, just to put a cap on what you're saying, is also this theater that was produced was also a means to allow them to arrest a bunch of people for just showing up to,
Right, and then there were legitimate people who were just there to tour the Capitol who got swept up in something, and they're being held without trial or charges for 3 years.
And I personally, I think that the Canadian trucker rally
was
thing was the same thing. It opened up a space for the government to block people's bank accounts and put them under arrest and do all kinds of things to them that they normally would not have been able to do.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there are no legitimate protests or rallies anymore. Everything is totally compromised.
Mm-hmm.
The only legitimate thing is maybe a backyard barbecue. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just just to put a cap on your cap, the South China Seas have been occupied by China, and there's been some rumblings about that. There's been some grumblings. There's some people that are pushing back saying no, they don't have the right to occupy the South China Seas. Well, clearly they feel they do, because now they've got a strong military presence in the South China Seas, which is not a good thing, which means that they can control the supply chain for 60% of the global population. That's a huge deal, and you should probably be paying more attention to that than a lot of things. You've got China, which is operating ports that are located in countries that are supposed to be allied with the United States.
In strategic locations.
In strategic locations. So why is it that our allies are making deals with China in front of our back?
In front of our back?
Yeah, that's my little mixed up way of saying that we know that it's going on and we're still allowing it, but then we're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening.
Right.
So, and then you've got, so why is Trump under the threat of indictment or some nonsense for theater when you've got actual treason that took place in 2013 and 2014 through the Hunter Biden, Chris Hines deals that were being made?
Well, you have a sitting president who actually did conduct deals that would be considered treasonous.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to the theater that they're accusing Trump of conducting, right?
So things are so fucked up and so messed up. Nothing is what it should be. And I think that what's going on in the World Health Organization with the international health regulations and, of course, the pandemic treaty, which I feel less problematic about. Other people may disagree. I think the actual IHR regulations, where they actually want to change what it means to be a sovereign human, is more important. Nobody's paying attention to, our bad boy is over there working deals with Tedros, the director of the World Health Organization. And who's that guy? That's Javier Becerra, the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Right.
Who the fuck said that he could play with my life? Basically, what they want to do is make one big global, health initiative. That's what One Health is all about.
Sure.
So that we're all treated the same. So if you've got chicken pox or if you've got a broken leg, you're treated all the same.
It goes beyond that, Julie.
I know
One
it
Health
does.
goes beyond that, but
I
this,
know
but
it does.
this other initiatives, I think, are leading up to that, and
Right.
and they're all part of like sort of a big package.
I know.
That's designed to
I
just
know.
like stick it to you. It's a hydra, yeah, exactly,
It's a
right.
hydra.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
we'll get into that another time.
Yeah. So you guys, thanks for putting up with us for these last hour and a half or so, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Friday Footnote.
Yeah, thanks, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.